There we go. We are live. This is Senate Finance. This is Wednesday, April 15th. Before we start, we have a pretty heavy agenda today, and it's probably going to be that way. Right now, Friday is open, and we're going to stay here until we finish all the bills we have to get up. I wanted to just run by you. It is all right with this committee going to release that data center bill to natural resources. It's all on citing data centers. It's all on environmental impacts. And unless the committee would really like to take that up, they would like it and they have time, I will send it over.
That's the House bill.
Yeah.
727.
Yeah, it's not a moratorium. It says if you meet all of these criteria.
Regulatory.
Yeah, it's regulatory. So if that's okay with you, I'll ask for a script for tomorrow. And we'll get that one moving. Because I think they'll have a better chance of getting it out here this year. Okay, so we're going to start on H519, an act relating to Vermont State Employee Retirement System Group G membership. And Cameron, you're going to walk us through this.
Yes, ma'am.
This is on for a vote in 10 minutes.
10 minutes. I can probably get you through this in 10 minutes.
Well, actually, got a little more time than
Okay.
that, but we're going to try and get this out of here.
For the record, Cameron Wood, Office of Legislative Counsel. I will do a walkthrough of 519 as passed by the House, and then Senator Collmore has asked me to brief you on a possible floor amendment from that committee that is making some very minor technical amendments that need to be fixed.
Okay, we could do those minor technical amendments in here, but
You absolutely could, and I will leave that to you and
if you would like to
Chair
do it on
Collmore.
the floor, that's fine.
I will mention to him that, but I don't know that he felt the need to do it. It's something I brought to them. They had already voted it out of committee, so he was willing to do a floor amendment to help address. So what this does, you have the state employees retirement system, and you have different groups and different retirement calculations for the different groups that are there. Over the past few years, you all created this new group, Group G. The first employees that you moved into this new group were to work at the Department of Corrections, providing, so I can mention it right here, that's the sub-I. Employees of the Department of Corrections who provide direct security and treatment services, and in a few other positions. You moved those individuals over to Group G. And then a few years later, you then moved sheriffs and deputy sheriffs into Group G. And the primary difference between Group F and Group G for these members, they were in Group F, is that they can reach their maximum retirement benefit after 20 years of service, kind of mirroring what other state police are eligible for, etc. So what this bill will do is there are 3 municipalities that participate in the state employees retirement system. There is a state system, there's a municipal system, and there's 3 municipal employers that participate in the state system: Randolph, Bethel, and Danville. And so what this bill will do is it will say 4 employees of those 3 political subdivisions that have, this is the 2 and the 3. So the 1 is employed by a municipal employer participating in the state system, have obtained level 2 or level 3 law enforcement officer certification, and are required to perform law enforcement duties as part of the primary function of their employment. It will move those individuals from their current position in Group F over to Group G to mirror what you've done recently for, as I mentioned, the employees of the Department of Corrections and the states, the sheriffs and the deputy sheriffs, etc. My understanding at this point in time is this, although there are 3 municipalities, there's only 1 municipality, Randolph, that actually employs individuals that meet this definition. And I believe it is potentially 5 positions, I think is the potential
I
maximum.
heard the
total at
numbers
this
3
point.
and 5, so it's 3
I think there's
thousand,
3
probably
employed.
5 employees, yeah.
I think there's 3 employed right now. And so the primary purpose of this, from the town's perspective, from Randolph, as their town leadership has testified throughout this, is to be more competitive for their law enforcement recruitment. As of right now, the individuals that are employed by the towns, they have a less, beneficial retirement package, if you will, because they have to work for a longer period of time in order to get to their maximum retirement benefit. And so that becomes a very challenging recruitment tool for them. So that's what this bill does. This amends the definition of the group G to insert those individuals. The next few changes throughout the next pages are going to be an amendment to the definition of normal retirement date to insert, as you can see here, under sub 7, there's going to be a sub 8 and a sub 9, and this is to insert a definition for these employees to give them a retirement date in the system that is in alignment with the other members of Group G. So it's a retirement date, as you can see there on the sub 3. Following 20 years of creditable service, at 55 years, they can reach maximum benefits at that point in time. I believe you have a question.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
2 things, maybe you already said this or we're going to say this, but two questions is one, the state retirement system versus the municipal. The municipal's more generous or has an earlier age. So is that correct?
Chris may be able to answer this better than I can.
The Christopher Joint Fiscal, they're very similar benefit structures. The municipal system, I'm using the word generous, like I would say there's one provision that's different. And the municipal Group D allows you to retire at 50 if you have at least 20 years of service for a normal unreduced retirement. Or if you don't do that, it's 55 to 20. So that is sort of the one notable difference.
So this change would put these guys more on par with other municipal police.
Yeah, absolutely,
the
absolutely.
Retirement age.
And this is very analogous to deputy sheriffs. So
Yeah, I remember that one. Yes.
Exactly. I figured you would.
Yes.
And that really creates equity with them and avoids a lot of the complications of moving members from like one pension system into another pension system.
Okay.
The folks in VSERS Group F are there for, these town folks are there for sort of historical reasons that likely predated the creation of the.
Okay, and that was my second question was why are these 3 random towns
Yeah,
in it?
it's a
just-
vestige of history.
Okay. It's not because they figured out something that the other towns didn't figure out, or because we passed a law letting them in and not nobody else or something like that. Okay, all right, thanks.
And so that's what, there's 9 pages here. As I mentioned, those are the definitions. It's going in and providing a retirement date and moving these positions specifically into the definition of Group G. Everything else in this bill are the necessary additional technical amendments to accomplish that. And so what you have here is just adding in the normal retirement date under the appropriate section for those positions. As you can see, 7 and 9 there, 8 on the bottom. So just a technical change to ensure that it's referencing the definitions that we've created. The next section here outlines what group the employees for these municipalities go into. So as you can see there on lines 11 and 12, it says these employees are considered Group F members except, and then it excludes elected municipal employees, the sheriffs and the deputy sheriffs that have already been moved to Group G. And now we're adding in the municipal law enforcement officers. So again, just another technical piece to accomplish the goal. And then the last section here, this entire section 4, is to outline the process where each time the body has moved individuals from one retirement group to another, you have a question of the point in time at which new employees go into the group. And then what do you do with the people who are already employed? Because they're already in retirement group F. And typically you can run into issues if you unilaterally move them into another group, because they technically have a contract with the state that gives them a specific retirement package, And so this section provides those employees with a one-time irrevocable election to move to Group G if they so choose. And so that would be section 4, and that's the bill. It goes into effect July 1 of 2026.
Okay, Senator Brock.
Just as a question, if you have a deputy sheriff who performed law enforcement duties, but is currently group 1, a level 1 employee, and they subsequently move to level 2, does this go forward retroactively? Or does it go forward at that point in time, or does it not go forward?
It would be at that point in time that they meet the definition of an employee in the membership group.
Okay.
So it wouldn't be retroactive,
Mhm.
to my knowledge.
Okay.
Okay.
And so very quickly,
Yeah.
Madam Chair, if I just, this amendment is, it's drafted right now, is from Senator Collimore, but this was, as I walked through with the committee last week, the other members of the Senate Government Operations Committee have agreed to join in this amendment. And I used this version because it was easy for me to get to the highlighted changes to articulate what is being done here. It strikes section 1, which is the definition section, inserts a new definition section. And the issue that I came across was when you all moved these positions for the Department of Corrections, and as you can see, this happened, I think it was in 2022. There is a gap of time that isn't accounted for. So it says the following employees who are first employed after July 1 of 2023 will be in Group G. Or people who are members of the system as of June 30th, 2022. And make that irrevocable election to move to Group G. So there's a gap.
1 year.
But 1 year gap that's not accounted for in the definitions. My understanding is this was just a kind of technical error. I don't think there was any intention, obviously, of leaving those people out. No one was left out in making that
Yeah, so
irrevocable
there-
election. This is just a retroactive cleanup piece to make sure the statute accurately reflects what should happen. If this change isn't done, then conceivably the people within that year don't have a retirement date. I don't think that there would be any practical consequence. I can't imagine the state denying them anything, but they just wouldn't be covered in the statutory definition. So each of the amendments that are here are simply changing that from 2022 to 2023. There's a few of them. Again, as these definitions are somewhat lengthy, so it's just in each of those instances making that change. And then the last one is just clarifying that it's on or after January 1, 2025. January 1 is a holiday. State generally doesn't hire people on holidays. They have to start at the beginning of a pay period, which typically can't begin on a holiday. However, in the effort of ensuring that we're not leaving anyone out for some, unknown reason, making that minor change to say on or after, and that occurs in 2 instances. So the amendment really is technical, but our office felt that it wasn't necessarily a technical amendment to go in the tech corrections bill. It does have a substantive impact. And so we felt that it should be in this. This bill is probably the best vehicle for making the change.
And Senator Collimore is going to make those changes on the floor.
Yes, ma'am. As of this point in time, unless you all tell them not to.
Well,
I know you're trying to vote this out,
Yes,
so
to be voted
yeah.
out 5 minutes ago.
Yep.
And we need to hear from Chris Root, who'll cover our area,
Very
which I assume is impact on,
I'll be very quick.
okay,
Would you like me to come up or?
whatever works.
I'll be respectful. Chris, on a very short fiscal note is posted. I'm not gonna screen share it. I'll just give you the highlights, but the bill really is not gonna have any impact to state revenues, and it's gonna have a de minimis impact to the state employees retirement system because of a few things. One is these towns that participate in the VSERS system, they pay the cost of their members in the system. So the employer cost gets borne by the town and paid. It doesn't hit the state budget. The second thing is that Group G, if you all remember, was intentionally designed to be cost neutral to the employer. So members pay for the more generous benefit in Group G through a higher contribution rate that is 4.68% higher than they would have otherwise paid had they remained in Group F. So the state doesn't pay any of these costs, it falls on the towns, and the incremental cost of moving these 3 to 5 people is borne by those individuals. So this is gonna lead to like an insignificant impact to the state employee retirement system. But since people are making contributions, those are revenues into the state system. That is why you all have the bill. This really does, I think in my view, it's a very simple and narrowly tailored approach to dealing with sort of a historical vestige that probably should have been dealt with when the deputy sheriffs were addressed a few years ago. I don't want people to have the impression that this is a bill that is specific just for one town. It just so happens that there's only one town right now that's presently impacted. So does anybody have any questions?
Any questions?
Sorry if this was clarified. I see the what, I see the JFO note, but what the why? What are we trying to accomplish with enabling this possible move from one group to the next?
Sure. My understanding of what motivated this is these 3 individuals in this one town have a pension benefit in Group F that's very different than their peers in either local or state law enforcement. And the biggest difference is what we call the multiplier. How much is a year of service worth? In the law enforcement pension groups, VMERS Group D, VSERS Group C, which is the state law enforcement, and Group G, which is the deputy sheriff. So a year of service is 2.5%. So you hit 50% of your average final compensation after 20 years of service. If you were in Group F, which these folks currently are, the multiplier is 1.67. So it takes 30 years of service to reach 50% of your IFC. So it's to have more parity in the benefit with similarly situated law enforcement.
And I would assume one of the recruitment areas to municipals might be deputy sheriffs, so we would give them a disadvantage if they were going to a less rich
Right,
retirement.
and other municipalities that are already in VMERS Group D already have that 2.5%. So it's comparable with other towns also.
Okay, any question? We have heard the word de minimis again, our favorite word. I would love a motion. Unless someone would like
We're not doing the amendment in here. We're gonna let.
that, at this point, we'll let Senator Collmore do it.
Okay, I will move that we concur. Because it's not changing with the House version of what is it? 519.
It's 519, it's sent to us. Did they make any changes in?
They did not.
No, they have yet to. That's what the amendment. will be.
Okay, so Senator Hardy has moved that we approve H 519 as it was voted from the House and sent to us from Senate Government Operations. Is there any further discussion? Are there any amendments? If not, I'm going to do this the easy way. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Folks say no. I've got that as 700, and if you would like to do one. Yeah,
Sure, I reported the sheriff.
I don't. We're probably more familiar with this than the rest of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was easy. Now we're moving on. We're ahead. Okay.
We're really
End up with. Okay, guys, let's see if Joe Remick is here for miscellaneous tax committee. We have a section by section, I believe it's on last Thursday or Friday. We have, and we're gonna hear about it today, one new point of pension.
That's,
Yeah, when and God, you may have been around in the house. I don't think you were on any of the committees. I think it was 4 years ago, maybe 3. We did, I think it was 793. It's burned into my mind because it was one of those omnibus bills that dealt with a whole bunch of utility regulations. And one of it was that they were and the word that we were using was telecom. And then I think the whole tax on the poles and wires, right? Oh, I think that was.
Yeah, Chris was in the same.
So that was on it. There was, part of it is we said that utilities, communications companies would pay an inventory or property tax, but their facilities would be treated as real property and they would pay a property tax to the state. Well, apparently the tax department has interpreted that to also include radio and television. So I think the only one that was here. I don't know if this was during your
this sounds vaguely familiar.
rebellion.
Remember, it got into a big, a tax on poles versus a tax on mileage.
Yeah,
It played out very differently in rural and urban. areas.
yeah.
So and this was part of it. And I remember the tax department came in and said, we can't value some of this stuff, take it off. So anyway, they have now interpreted it as we were looking at poles and wires and cell phones and internet. They are now interpreting this as broadcast. So I've heard from my local radio station, which is The Point. I've heard from Vermont Public, and we will have a representative in here today because the thing in the bill is about penalties if you don't pay, and apparently they are the ones getting the overdue notices because they didn't think they were included. And obviously being included is costly.
So yeah, they've communicated with me as well. I reported this bill, so it's now Act 145, so I'm pretty familiar with it.
You did report it?
Yeah,
So I wasn't on the committee. I just remember-
Catherine Stibbs was
the House.
in the house. Okay, yes, you told me that.
Pretty familiar with this, and I do not remember it directly or intending to catch one-way communications. And so Wendy Mace has been in communication with me and said that, for example, Section 248A, they can't go through that because it's not two-way communications. And so this tax bill was all about telecommunications and not broadcasters. So they're getting swept up in an interpretation. I guess they're testifying today.
They are testifying and Jill Remick is testifying. And we will see, there's Jill. We're ahead of time, so your time is excellent. I was just telling the committee that we do seem to have a conflict over the definition of telecom or telecommunications. I guess were you on this committee?
I was on this committee and I reported this bill in the first
Okay.
session.
Your first session. So 2 of us were here.
Senator Brock was here too. He was on.
Yes. That's right. Senator Brock's been here almost as long as I have, so we are regulars. So we have got that to do. I'm looking for my section by section. to see if we can get this out. Does anybody, the bulk of this bill is all of those decouplings that we went over yesterday from the feds and recoupling and it's in last Friday, we got section by section. No, let's be.
It was last Thursday.
It was Thursday. It was at the end of last week. So, yeah,
Section 6, I think we're interested in.
yeah. Well, I'm trying to find out if tax credits for S corporate, okay. 1, 2, 3 and 4 PBR conducts of unenrolled parcels. These are all pretty much housekeeping, I think, from the tax department, calculation of payments, municipalities, tax loss due to flood prone. These, I haven't heard any concern over, they really are. T fund sunset for 5 years. Inflator references from NEAP to NIPA because NEAP no longer exists. Okay, I remember that. And we did that, you do NIPA yesterday. It's credit to be counted 100% of the property tax liability party. All of it, that's the separation and divorce. State tax, lies the state threshold with tax. Extends down payment assistance. Okay. That's one. We actually did that on another bill. The down payment assistance is on here. And then I think. So does anyone have any problem with anything up to 17?
Problem, not the right word.
All right,
Well-
issue, change.
Section 6, so I think we have testimony today, this afternoon. There is, I did speak to Jill Romnick about this, I'd love for her to testify on it, but there's a modest request that we have the effective date of Section 6 apply to fiscal year 27. It's this new tax code from Act 145 that's coming into line, and this would is creating consternation, especially with moving people's appealability if they aren't quite understanding what they need to report and not report. So they're just asking for another year before the non-appealability goes into effect.
Okay, that is
Which is
section 6.
Section 6.
And that's the telecom people. Okay, and we will hear from them today.
Okay.
So section 6 is questionable.
Relatedly, I think you were just mentioning Wendy Mays from Vermont on Section 6.
It will be here.
Yeah, she's interested to
Yeah,
have us hear about the concerns with the tax interpretations of Act 145.
Okay.
The broadcast equipment. And that's related to Section 6 as well.
Section 6 is the
Okay,
problem.
yeah.
All the other things in Bill.
and we will hear from, all right, yeah, that's 6. 7 clarifies the treatment of CHIP sites to the same as TIF districts for the purpose of the equalization study. Anyone have any issues with 7? I think these are still in-house. Study requires PBR to use 100%. We'll have Jill talk about the CLA. Extends the health IT fund sunset for 5 years. I am not sure where that one's coming from. NEAP to NIPA, I believe, is technical since NEAP doesn't exist. Property tax, 100% of the tax liability of the party and separation of divorce. I don't think we've had that. Aligning the estate tax. Extending down payment assistance, I believe we've already voted to do that. So. Federal tax, all right, 18 and 19 is that federal $1,700 tax credit. We had a bill in here, remember?
S-161 from the Senate Ed.
It came from Senate Ed, and their proposal was that we allow that tax credit, but that it would be designated to go to after student enhancements for primarily low-income kids. There was concern in here that that the rules hadn't been promulgated. And there was some concern that if we did anything and it got struck down, then maybe we would have endowments going to private schools. We didn't do anything. This expressly says that we're not going to participate this year. And I believe it holds to the legislature to determine if we reserve the right to change our mind in future years, depending on how the rules play out. And I believe, yeah, the General Assembly would annually choose whether to participate. So it says the governor or another legal body. So this is really taking that authority and appropriating it to the General Assembly and saying, we're not going to do anything this year. We're going to wait and see how the rules play out. And the next year we will do it. So there's that, which could be a little controversial. 21 through 23 is that limits the Department of Wildlife's fee setting authority. But department's regulation, yeah, it takes away that. And I believe they got an increase in the budget to cover what they would have made this year. So they're held harmless, and it sets up a report.
They're coming tomorrow, I think, and we took testimony on this in Natural Resources this morning, and generally, I think everyone was okay with what's in
With what's here.
with what's here.
Okay.
I don't want to speak for staff, but that's my impression. Everyone's like, this seems okay.
Then we've got, this is the grand list submission. This is again dates, statutory language, empower people to supervise collection of delinquent taxes, and that I think somewhat housekeeping, but all right, we're 50 through 53 deletes the pilot special fund PBR expenses because you're not. We'll hear that. Then there's funding for the JFO study, tax study. And then we start in 55 on down with the decoupling and recoupling. And those are the sections that are stopping us from losing money, and in the end actually raises money, which then it raises money.
Are we getting this?
Jill is here.
Are you here to testify on this right now?
Yep.
Are we?
But I'm trying to figure out who we need to hear from. There's this one. And the yield bill does the money, yes, the alteration of the taxes in
No, that happens in this bill at the very end.
at the very end, all right? Okay, purchase and use, yes,
Yep.
62 through 63. That will also be maybe controversial. That's where we adjust the rates. We give a rate change for purchase and use. The amount of purchase and use that goes to transportation to about 10 million. And then the 10 million, the Ed Fund gets 10 million more from rooms and meals. So that's a wash. The general fund will just be losing $1 of rooms and meals. That money is being made up in the $10 million that we're raising in decoupling, and decoupling set this bill. Transportation hasn't been voted out yet and won't come to us until after they would like it. We, Chair of Transportation is, I know they are following the governor's, at least as things sit on the table at the moment. They are looking, the latest proposal in there probably come out, which was the governor's proposal, which was to this year do a $10 million transfer to the ed fund. And keep it to transportation, keep ed whole this year. But then next year, 20 million, there'd be no hold harmless, and 20 million would come out, and then 30 and 40 and 50. So that after 5 years, there would be a $50 million hole in the education fund. There's no proposal for how we close a $50 million hole in the end. So that, I think I'm looking at Chris, if I cut on, I missed any of the
I think you summed it up perfectly, Madam Chair.
salient points. So all of these things hold together. We are going to have to make decisions before the transportation bill gets here.
One thing that I don't know what we do is on section 59. Which is about the tax credits. I think these are
Oh, yeah.
now. We had passed earlier this session a bill where this committee changed it to 3.5 million.
Right.
This has 4
This-
million.
Yep.
So I don't know how we want to deal with that as a committee, if it's, but just wanted to note that.
That is there, the original bill, we dealt with that on came from economic development.
Yeah.
It was to 4. I don't know if that's where we want to stand our,
Well, it gives us a little bit of money maybe
it does.
to do something with it. I'm trying, I've gotten some information on the renter credit and the municipal. Remember I mentioned this yesterday. I don't have enough, I need to talk to JFO now, but I got some
Okay.
information, so
You've got till Friday.
so I'm trying. They're busy people, so.
I know. So anyway, that's where I think we are. If anybody at this point has a real, the decoupling sections are the ones that are probably most significant. The budget is riding on them. And yeah. So anyone has problems with anything in there, let me know. Okay, so now we're going back to the real agenda. And we are on miscellaneous tax. And Jill, come on up, or Rebecca, are you together?
Yeah.
He's up there, okay. This is Tax Dog and Pony Show. You have the floor, so do what works.
Sure. Labby, I was thinking I might start with sections 18 and 19 since we were just discussing them in committee, if that's okay, and then I'll kick it to Abby and we can end with Tom's property. For the record, Rebecca Samroff, Deputy Tax Commissioner. I'll admit I'm not an expert here. This is on the scholarship granting organization, which is I think you summarized it really well. The provision of the federal law that allows a federal refundable or non-refundable tax credit, dollar for dollar up to $1,700 for folks making contributions to these scholarship granting organizations in states who have opted into the program. So I just want to flag from the administration's perspective, the governor is not supportive of the language in this bill that takes him out of the process. I know the administration has been meeting with the U.S. Treasury and there's some excitement about how this federal program could be used in a Vermont context to tailor support, through scholarship granting organization, that would be stood up this year, to aftercare, to after school programs and to tutoring. I think that everyone seems very philosophically aligned that in Vermont, we would not be trying to deploy this in the way that we're anticipating many red states would, and, sending kids to private schools, undermining the public school program. I think we're all kind of in agreement this would be for Vermont public school population.
Yeah, okay, none of us want to relinquish our power.
Yeah.
We can figure out a way, and I think it sounds like the goals are similar. We would like to be able to make sure this goes to Vermont Public Schools or additional after-school additional services.
Yeah, our public school students at the
Public
very
school
least, yeah.
students, yeah, summer programs. Okay,
So I wanted to make sure that we were on the record on behalf of the administration for his request would be that this be removed from the miscellaneous tax bill wholesale. I think they're also, much more amenable to the version that was passed unanimously out of Senate Education. Something more along those lines where the executive branch isn't fully cut out. And I think part of the thinking there is that, the first deadline, if we wanted to stand this up this coming year, the deadline is before this body meets again.
right,
And
that was part of the concern.
right. And they've been, as I said, engaged with the US Treasury, who have not formally issued their guidance yet, which will be required before any state can take action. But it's been really fruitful conversations, and they like what they're hearing about how this could be tailored to those needs.
Okay, if we put in something similar to Senate Education's bill, that will send us to conference. I don't think we could just take it out. I think there's too much concern that this could end up being a funding source for private schools. So I think we might replace this with something similar to the suggestion Senator Bongard's brought to us, which could then be refined in conference. I think if we just take it out, well, I think it might be problematic.
Thank you. Chair comments. Does it not give the governor pause that we don't have the rules and guidance from the federal government yet?
It gives, he must pause until those rules and guidance come out, but those are expected shortly. The IRS is getting a lot of pressure about it from all states. So, I think the administration feels like the executive branch will be, around and nimble to take the guidance and stand up an organization that can do what it sounds like everyone's kind of on the same page about doing, direct.
But we might be on the same page, and I don't think it's a question of public or private. I think it's a question of who knows what's going to come from the federal government, and who knows what kind of scholarship granting organizations they're going to want to prop up. I can imagine some horrific scenarios, frankly, of organizations that might be anti-LGBTQ or who knows. So that is what worries me about not having a little bit more structure around this. And it sounds as though the governor's not even contemplating those possibilities. And that worries me.
I guess I've heard the opposite, that the governor has been engaged with US Treasury and really likes the flexibility that this program seems to provide states who don't want to use this to funnel.
So he has more information than we have, it sounds like at this point.
I know, I'm not sure if there's been a larger delegation meeting with the US Treasury, or if it's just an executive branch part. Folks, I will acknowledge, I'm sorry to be the messenger here because I'm not very steeped in this at all. But it is in our miscellaneous tax bill, which, has some fairly important things for my department and our taxpayers, kind of hanging in the wings. So when I hear that his support is wavering, I just want to carry that
It
message.
sounds like we may all want to accomplish the same thing. It's getting the wording that gives security to people that are afraid once we go home, something very different than we might like. Again, the risk is 1 year, we will be back here and we will fix it.
So, Madam Chair, I think, we got testimony that said that after next year, we could still make changes that would be could be retroactively applied once we have more information. We often in this committee, and I can name a bunch of other times just this session where we have been reluctant or decided not to move forward with something because we did not have the information. We don't have the federal guidelines on this. To Senator Hewlett's point, it is possible that the federal government will actually have guidelines about the types of these scholarship granting organizations that are allowed, or preferred, or, you know, and that even if the governor or the legislature is involved in it, they may have not the ability to direct it toward the things that we allegedly all are in agreement about, which I'm not even sure we're all in agreement about, but I think the language that's in here right now protects the state from potentially being at the whim of a federal government that is not playing by the same rules or having the same priorities. And we can always go back and retroactively change it next session. So
we will lose 1 year of funding
I
for,
thought we got testimony from our legislative council that said that we could.
we can join. But we can't give, I don't think, Kirby, if we decide to join next May, can people claim a tax credit on they filed yesterday to go to a Vermont? I think we can retroactively decide to join in the program, but we would lose 1 year of funding.
Kirby Key Legislative Council, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
So in 2027 would be the first year that states can opt in. And you have a little bit of leeway where you don't have to turn in your list by January 1 necessarily, that the federal government may accept it later, but we still don't know exactly how late.
First of 27.
Of 27, but so that would mean you're identifying the organizations that taxpayers could donate to in 27 when they go to file their taxes in 28 for tax year 27. So to the point where you're where something could be missed out would be if Vermont does not submit a list for 2027 at all, then for tax year 2027, Vermont taxpayers would not be able to contribute to an SGO in Vermont. Would be the consequence of that, but it would not preclude you under the statute as it's written right now, and I don't anticipate the regulations changing that. It would not preclude Vermont from then having legislation in place and participating in 2028.
Right.
And I'll also remind you that if you do nothing at all, then the governor could just decide that Vermont will participate.
And
So this, just to clarify, that we can next year make changes. Even
Yes.
with this language that for Vermont participate in 2027.
But the language that's in H 933 right now,
Mhm.
because of the timing of the January 1 date
getting the list in.
and the legislative session being a very bad partner there, it's a bit ambiguous at the moment. But if you leave 933 the way it is, and you want to opt in for 2027 for Vermont, you would have to try to pass legislation, preferably earlier in the session. I'm not sure, but and that legislation would, under the provisions in 933 right now, the legislature would identify SGOs in that legislation to send a list to the IRS for participation in 2027. The ambiguous part is, depending on how long it takes for you to do that, will the IRS accept it? I don't see any reason for you to be too worried about that, but it is ambiguous. It's like we're not sure.
And we will have a new legislature next year. We'd have perhaps a lot of members. It's the last few years is played out again. It typically gets off to a fairly slow start the first year. what's at risk is 1 year. If if the IRS says, no, you can only go to private schools and you can only do this, then for 1 year, until we get back and change it or opt out, then private schools are gonna get some money. If, on the other hand, if we opt in and they say it's okay to go ahead, then the public school programs that we identify will get some money. If we do nothing, then there's a year lag where we're risking 1 year at most, because we can always come back next year and change it for the year for 28 without problem.
It's so much harder to change things that are already in place than to start me with something. And we don't know what the federal requirements are.
No, we do not.
And we don't have a governor that's aligned with the legislature or a legislature that's aligned on education policy.
Right. But on this one issue, it sounds like we might be aligned, and it might be a good thing to be aligned.
Sure that we're aligned.
Okay, let's move on. This one has got a red flag.
Abby, I'll hand it over to you next.
You're still there, Grace.
I'm still here. Thank you. Abby Shepard, I'm the policy director at the Department of Taxes. And I'm sorry to completely change gears. I have a few proposals that we would like to make if the committee is willing to give me a few minutes to talk about some very technical property issues.
Okay.
Great, thank you. I'll try and be brief, and please stop me if I drone on too long. So through the process of this bill being developed and a lot of the discussions this year about reappraisals and other property tax issues, we identified 3 other areas we'd like to ask the committee to add some statutory changes to. The first is relating to current use. So there is currently a requirement for forest management activity reports to be filed with PVR. When landowners are enrolled in current use, they have to let PVR know if they've done any sort of management activity on their property. And we, as the current use system has been shifted over into our VTAX system, we have noticed that there has become quite a backlog because a current statute requires all of the owners to sign their forest management activity reports. So our first request here is to just change that requirement that all owners must sign these reports, and instead ask that a owner or the forester who is helping that owner can sign, and that you don't need every owner to sign. So that's the first very technical request, and Jill is, I believe, in the room, could speak to the fact that it would really help with our administrative burden and free up some very valuable PVR staff time.
Abby, do you know where in the bill, can you orient us at all, or?
Oh, so yes, these are new requests. These are not currently in the language as passed out of the House.
Yeah, but like, is there a section that it would be added to, or? No.
No, so this is a new statutory section. I'd be happy to flag them for you or for Kirby Keaton or Legislative Council. It's in Title 32, Section 3755. I don't believe the bill has this particular section amended anywhere else in the bill.
It's saying you have to go trace down all the owners, which might be an entire family, that either one owner or the forester could sign off saying you are doing your forest management plan. Okay.
That's right.
Easier to get. Okay, especially if some of those owners might live out of country. I know many of them live out of state. Postal service being what it is, I hope you take online signatures. But that would make it easier. Okay, that does sound like housekeeping. We'll leave it to you and Kirby as to where it goes in this bill. Let's do the next.
Great, thank you. The next also came up in discussions actually in relation to the reappraisal system. We also sort of came across this section that our property hearing officer did flag for us as sometimes creating a lot of confusion. It's when there is this sort of very, I don't want to say archaic, but there is this sort of unknown statute that allows a taxpayer, the select board, or an interested party named by the town to object to an appeal from the Board of Civil Authority. So when there's a property valuation decision that goes to the Board of Civil Authority and then someone appeals, there is also an ability to object to that appeal because it's defective in some way. So looking at that statute, it's actually a very short appeal period. It's only 14 days. So our first request is to extend that to 30 days, given how there are a lot of delays in mail delivery at the moment. And in addition, to change when the notice period begins so that it is linked to the PVR clerk letting all of the parties know, hey, we've received an appeal. There is this ability to object to the appeal. Your appeal period or objection period starts now. So we're just asking for clarity there so that the process doesn't trip people up who may not even know they have the ability to object and may just miss that objection period because of the short 14-day timeline.
Okay, any questions, any objections? Bill, at this point, sounds like housekeeping.
Just for clarification, the appeals period begins 14 days after or now, and in your proposal, 30 days after what?
So currently it's 13 days after mailing of the notice by the town clerk to PVR that there has been an appeal from a BCA decision. We're asking to change it to 30 days after PVR has received the appeal. We will then notify all of the parties and say, you have a 30-day period to object to this appeal.
And in sending it out to the parties, is there any requirement that PVR sends it out in a timely fashion? What if they wait 20 days before they mail it? How does that protect the person who has the right of appeal?
It would still run from the time that PVR sends out the notice of the right to object. So there are two different, there's the actual appeal of the property valuation, and then there's also this ability to object to the appeal. And all parties would receive the notice. And my understanding, and I apologize to put you on the spot, Jill, is that's currently happening now, that PVR is sending out a notice that there's been an appeal.
Correct.
And how does notice have to be sent out in a certain manner? For example, does the property owner have to receive it by certified mail, or are you just basing it on a date that you record within the department or agency?
Statute only requires mailing, but I, again, sorry to defer to you, Jill. I don't know what our practice is for the certification or other mailing.
Very few of them require certified mail. Usually it's just mail.
My question essentially is that if someone who ought to be a party to this says, I never got it. Nobody ever sent anything to me. Does the agency, the department, have the ability to say, we sent it on such and such a date, and the recipient, the person to be receiving it actually got it, as opposed to we put it in the mail? I had a Christmas card returned. It was sent on December 22nd, and I got back last week from the Postal Service.
I had the same thing happen, Randy. Maybe they were doing all the Christmas cards.
But I mean, for the person who has a right to appeal, and it got lost in the mail, they never got it, nobody notified them, and so on, is that a potential issue here that we should be addressing?
Is this something that will become more clear when we see the language? In terms of the timeline? I'm looking at Kirby, but I don't know if you've looked at it
What
yet.
I'm hearing is it's not the appeal itself. In this case, the request is just about the notice of our right to object. So, I mean, same issue that you're talking about,
Yeah.
just but the circumstance isn't as
Not as serious as the notion.
not as serious as the ability to appeal.
Have there ever been cases in the past where people have had this right and they've said, well, nobody ever notified me?
That I can't speak to. I know that the department certainly does hear that folks haven't received the information. And I can follow up with what our practices are for the mailing. We have a docket clerk who handles all of the notices, so I can find that out for you and let you know.
It would be useful just to have some background about what's happening in practice first. And second of all, of people who say they haven't been notified, do you have any examples of that as to how they've been has been handled?
Okay. If you can find that out for us, we have till Friday. If we change something, then it can be done. So if we just change a day or a date or something in this, it's open to being adjusted in committee of conference.
Great, certainly. I will follow up with that. The final change, and I'll try and be brief, is relating to what we call the contiguous parcel rule. Under current law, adjacent parcels of property that are owned by the same owner are required to be combined and treated as one parcel for property valuation, and importantly, for current use for eligibility for that acreage requirement. Last year, in collaboration with the Vermont Center for Geographic Information, TAX had proposed to change that rule, the language that's in statute slightly, but it ended up passing in a slightly different form than we had recommended, and it was subject to a contingent effective date in Act 73. So we had asked, and this is a section in this bill, H933, it's section 20. We had asked just to clarify that we would like the contiguous parcel language to distinguish between combining parcels for property valuation purposes and for purposes of mapping. So this is why VCGI is interested, and per parcel payments, to make it clear that when mapping is done, looking at grand list data, those different contiguous parcels, so there are 2 different parcels or 3 different parcels, that each is considered a separate parcel, and this will improve the mapping data. Many towns in Vermont are already reporting to VCGI, and they are separating out multiple parcels that are owned by the same owner, but it's not done consistently. So we're just asking for a different, clearer treatment. It would not affect property valuation, but it is within the Title 32 property tax law. Also, we are asking for the effective date that passed the House to be delayed 1 year so that we can have enough time. We were a little ahead of our skis and asked to have it effective for next grand list in 2027. We'd love to have just a little more time to work with listers, because for those towns that aren't currently doing it, separating out these different parcels, we would like to have time to clarify what they need to change.
Okay, can you send that to Kirby? Kirby, there is
Absolutely.
section 20 on the side by side. It's at the bottom, and then we go 18, 19, and 21 through 23. So I've just got to note section 20 needs some clarification, and
The effective date changes what,
yeah,
but I'll double check with that.
it sounds like more housekeeping. Okay,
Great. Thank you for your time.
thank you. Okay. Jill, we think that gets us to section 6, or do we have more? Ooh, moral support.
Good afternoon. My name is Jill Remick. I'm the Director of Property Valuation and Review for the Tax Department. I was asked to come in specifically about section 6. I can just quick anecdote. The idea of the language that our hearing officer proposed is actually to sort of ensure more time to notify taxpayers about their ability to object, because we've had times where the hearing officer receives things and she's in a catch-22 because it's too late for the objection to appeal to be filed in the correct place, because 14 days from when the town mails it, it's very.
It's a mail service, yes.
They have no option except for to deny the appeal.
Places in the capital city, never mind out in the boonies where they don't get mail for 2 weeks, so.
So section 6 in the miscellaneous tax bill is Again, that was a proposal from the tax department. It's a pretty, we consider it a pretty technical, straightforward, correction. I do want to sort of distinguish between that particular item and that language, which is related to, failure to submit the inventory and sort of overall concerns about the communications property taxation change that we're in the midst of right now. So the language that is in the bill currently, is language that we actually took from another part of statute regarding failure to return inventory. The way it's written in the statute currently is it's failure to return the inventory to the municipalities. So this is saying, okay, well, now that the tax department is the one responsible for collecting those, we're the place that those inventories will be coming to. We certainly, because we are quite literally right in the middle of collecting these inventories right now, never intended for this to be like a gotcha that was happening in the next 2 months. This being the miscellaneous tax bill, it might not get signed until whenever. But we're happy to, you know, acknowledge that if it provides a sense of sort of comfort or definition to have it effective July 1 or January 1, as long as it's in place for the 2027 calendar year's grand list.
Okay. The concern we've heard, and we're gonna hear from them, and if you can stick around, help to get rebuttal. But is that this has been interpreted as including one-way communications broadcast. I remember this bill, I believe it was 793, and I don't remember bill numbers even today. Because it was a very complex bill. This section was especially very complex. And I don't remember, and I'm looking at Senator Chittenden and Senator Brock, who are also here. I don't remember talking about radio and TV at all. It was telecommunications, and it was telecommunication towers, and I remember discussion about the little house at the bottom and the stuff that's in the little house at the bottom of the tower. There's nothing about it. So we've got some people from the broadcast industry, and give you a chance.
Yeah.
First, then them, then rebuttal. Then we'll do a rebuttal.
Right, and just for a little table setting, this Act 145, this was not a tax department proposal, by the way. It was pretty intimidating. This is an entirely new treatment of property.
Yes.
So it is a combination of adding a new category to the grand list, that's telecommunications property, communications property. TC is our acronym we went with in the grand list. From the telephone personal property tax, that's now repealed. The gross receipts tax, that is now repealed. There was business personal property that the municipalities that opted to tax business personal property fell into this category. There was also the personal property cable that was a category on the grand list. So we within a year of that bill being passed, the legislature did allow us a 1-year extension to implement this, because this requires us to get an expert who does communications property valuation and can help us identify this inventory, because that is not something that existed, right? This isn't just changing the taxation treatment of a bucket of properties. This is identifying all of those from these various buckets.
And with that little machine in the little hub on the tower.
So we did hire a consultant this past year. We created the inventory forms. That consultant created the inventory forms. Frankly, there's 6 different forms because there are several different types of cable, fiber optic, right? And they're all different inventories that would be represented on those forms. So statutorily, the window in which we're operating in right now is we were required to send out those forms to the entities that, again, to the best of our ability, we're trying to cast that net wide. And they had to return them to us by March 31. Obviously, this being the first year, it's a pretty in-depth inventory form that we're asking folks for. We're certainly granting extensions to anyone who's asking. So we're April 15th, right in the middle of those extensions that we have offered. So we're definitely trying to establish the baseline of what this property would be. And so what happened is we again gathered a list of, to the best of our ability, what would be considered communications property. We went to the FCC sites, we got the Public Utility Commission identifications. We took the ones off the grand list. We sort of scoured the grand list to see what things might fit under there. And we sent out this mailing, this, hundreds and hundreds of mailing to sort of cast that net wide. And we got something like, nobody's even been here for 5 years, or this company doesn't exist. We had a lot of that, a lot of returned mail. And so part of that was these one-way broadcasters, right? So we definitely agree with the general statement that it is clearly two-way communication is what the definition is in the statute. We hope that folks could still either communicate to us, hey, this does not apply to us individually as taxpayers, right? I can't sort of make a sweeping declaration in this room that assumes everyone who might have those sort of properties can, not participate, because there might be some that might be using those towers also for two-way communication, or maybe they're leasing them to a company. And we're really just trying to get the full picture of what could or could not fit under this. And so, yes, we cast that net very wide. I think it's easier to sort of shave things off as we refine this definition over the coming years than start small and then try to convince folks that we need to add them on. We're right smack dab in the middle of our very first year implementing this really complex treatment. We fully expected, anticipate, and are prepared for, and sort of in a way hope for appeals and things like that, so that we can also use those determinations to help us narrow what this definition is and is not.
So agree that one-way communications was not considered by the legislature.
Right. So, but if those towers, for example, also provide,
If they own a tower and
we at least want to know that.
putting something else on the.
Yeah, most of those broadcast towers are maybe on the grand list already. They're not necessarily particularly high value. They wouldn't necessarily get that valuation treatment by our new communications valuation person. But yeah, they should already be identified and on the grand list.
Okay. Just to distill the fine point, like as Jill's saying, not everyone who's received an inventory request from the tax department in this very first year of information gathering is going to become a taxpayer.
And not necessarily going to get their
Certainly
tax
not.
bill next year.
Yeah, and certainly not for everything that's on their inventories if they do end up having, some aspects of taxes.
So perhaps some of the panic is.
Yeah, and anticipated, this is, we don't get to roll out completely new tax types all the time, but we have done it before. And, it is like a really important part of the process to have this, accessible, equitable, open appeals process where everyone can come and, engage in the process we have here at the state. And, I think the questions about what should or shouldn't be taxable would be much better suited for next session when we've had at least 1 year under our belt, when, any of the folks that are, feeling a little agita right now have actually seen a tax bill and know what ended up being determined as taxable and have had like a formal exchange with the department about that. So, that's my 2 cents of process.
So we probably shouldn't say at this point. Nothing at XYZ radio or TV station, they're all tax exempt. Because they may be housing something else on a tower, they may be using, it's not their broadcasting equipment. But you don't know what's out there.
Yeah, we don't know who's in the club and who's not.
And some of those
either.
entities
So you're
might
trying to
have
find out
fiber
who's
optics or
out
other
there.
right.
But it is agreed that the legislature did not intend, and it is now
It's
on the
clearly
record on
two-way.
Zoom forever, that we did not intend to put one-way communications under this taxation scheme. Okay, Senator Chip.
Thank you for clarifying that, Madam Chair, because that's what I recall in reporting the bill. But my question really to the two of you is, can you further articulate, clarify where we are in the implementation timeline? Are these organizations receiving tax bills right now, or just requests for property? Once you have that, they would start to owe taxes next year? Where's the timeline?
Right, so these are going onto the grand list for this year as real property. So whenever towns are mailing out their property tax bills in July, August, September, October, that would be the first time these entities would be getting that property tax bill from their town as real property. Now, maybe some of them had been before, or they may have been getting a bill from the town for the business personal property tax. They may still get that because one of the other pieces that was of, concern in here that Ledge Council made sure to address is it makes a bright line of what the definition of business personal property is. Because my concern, I remember when I sat in the seat, was that it was going to be a gray area and we were either going to double tax or not tax at all. So where we're at right now, right, so the statutory timeline, we're right smack in the middle of right now. We sent out the inventory forms as required by statute. The providers have until March 31, so a couple weeks ago, to get this to us. Like we said, we're still answering questions. Do I even have to fill this out? What is this? I just got this letter from you guys, or can I have 30 days? Because this is a lot of information you're asking for. And then we are supposed to, PBR is supposed to provide the values to the towns by May 1. And then that allows the towns to notify the taxpayers, for better or worse, right? Vermont has the 251 starting points for property appeals. So the towns will then notify that taxpayer of what their valuation is and their appeal right. They can appeal that at the local level. And then if they're not satisfied with that outcome, then they appeal to the BCA, and then they can appeal to the PBR hearing officers. So they will get sort of a notice of value in May from the town that also includes their appeal rights. So that kicks off that process. Ideally, right, the statutory timeline of that, so that when property tax bills go out, they reflect that result of that appeal.
Oh, yeah. So I heard you say that this is all anticipated, that you're expecting these appeals to work through these cases. Are you worried about the volume of appeals we're anticipating from what you're seeing so far in that crunch time for both the organizations as well as our local municipalities and BCAs? Is this going to be overwhelming, or is there anything we might want to consider to elongate this conversation?
It feels like a lot. I do think this year, there's just going to be a volume. We've actually had our attorneys kind of write up a stipulation agreement that we can provide to towns, so that they and the provider can just sort of skip over BCA or say, we're just appealing to the state, so that they only have to appeal one place or maybe a handful of places rather than 251 places. We did just this morning have a few-hour-long webinar with the town to kind of explain this. And I think this is complicated, but when you talk about leased land and valuation of the land and who owns the deed to the right, you bought the municipalities have another layer of sort of complexity that they have to they're working through, because this is different. This is not how you're going to do this in the past. So yeah, we're expecting, and so sorry, for the BCA, it can be appealed either to Superior Court or to the PBR hearing officer, and then from there to the Supreme Court. So yeah, I think.
Thanks, Jill. This sounds like a lot. I'm just wondering, are you asking for changes? That's what I'm unclear about. You're okay with what's in the bill right now? Okay.
Right. We were just in here, like I said, the inventory, what it reads specifically is that failure to sort of willfully not participating in providing this inventory, similar to what was in statute until this bill happened for providing that to municipalities. That's
exactly the same.
Yeah. So basically
left out when we changed the bill. So there is a penalty for not providing the inventory.
Right. So what it is essentially, if you sort of willfully disregard this and you don't participate, then we still have to come with a value. If the state determines that, yeah, there's a property there that we have to use what we have to come with that value. And if we're sort of put in that position, then you're forfeiting your right to appeal that valuation because you didn't participate in the valuation. And there's, I think, $100 fine. Again, this has been since the 60s. It looks like we just sort of copied and pasted. We're not interested in administering a fine unless we absolutely had to. We also definitely never meant for this to imply that there was not going to be appeal rates this first year. If anything, like I said, we sort of welcome this so we can clear this up. So the only piece we were in here for is that adding that piece in the unsettled tax bill because it wasn't originally included in Act 145.
Okay. So this puts a penalty on willingly not, and I can see, I haven't heard anything from the telecom providers. So, but I can see where the broadcast, the one-way communications people, apparently they got this notice and they're interpreting it as you're gonna take that, and you're gonna tax all that inventory. Which, depending on their financial situation, could be
Yeah,
a major impact. And so you're saying you need them to supply the inventory because parts of their inventory, if it's a two-way communication, they've got a tower that lets them talk to their reporters on a closed network or something. It's a two-way. You just need to know that this is kind of a fishing expedition, so we know what's out there because technology has changed so fast. How's it going with doing the polls? I shouldn't ask. I mean, that was pretty simple in comparison. But okay,
But I think you're describing right, it's really about wrapping our arms around everything that's there, including non-taxable. So we know that it's not taxable.
and maybe you can. We'll hear from the industry, but maybe you can have some private all discussions.
yes.
See if there are any issues.
Right, and we definitely have, I hope folks feel like we have made ourselves and our contractor and our attorney. We've held a lot of these calls to try to hash these things out. There's also, right, the technology has changed so much and companies buy other companies. So there's been a lot of untangling in those conversations. And sometimes we're like, you know what? Yes, you're right. And so the one-way broadcast is getting this message, while it probably was, scary.
Yeah.
We just would prefer individual taxpayers who aren't sure, check with us or let us know or be like, yeah, we don't have anything like this. And we've gotten those. We've had plenty of people who have sent us a letter saying, hey, we got your letter. We don't fall under this or we don't exist anymore. We've gotten 60 or so far, right? Like I said, the deadline was March 31. So we've gotten several already. So those folks are operating under the way the statute is currently written.
Okay,
I could see in future years, either us or taxpayers coming back with some clarifying language, but we're still gathering information. It's still a bit
okay, yeah, so you still don't know enough to ask us.
correct.
To fix it, okay. Senator Chittenden,
Just to clarify, the first thing you said at the testimony, I want to make sure that I heard it correctly, but you are comfortable, if not supportive of, for section 6, the synchronization language, just pushing it out a year so it's effective for fiscal year 27.
Correct.
Correct, okay.
So it's in place for the 2027 property tax grand list and tax billing cycle. Yeah,
Supportive of that.
yes.
Yeah, okay. And that's how we would have administered or expected that to hit our administration either way. But happy to clarify that.
anything else?
Another piece about how the language was written referenced submitting taxable property to us. And I think that was sort of written for the long term, that this is the companies are required to submit their taxable inventory to us. That also does not negate anyone's appeal rights. You can fill out the inventory to the best of your abilities. And if you want to appeal and say, you added this to the inventory, but it's not taxable, that's also appealable. So you can appeal the methodology, you can appeal what we included in the valuation, you can appeal the number itself.
You could write on the inventory that you don't agree this is taxable, but understand you're being asked for it, and that will not waive your appeal rights either.
Okay,
And your inventory under protest.
stand under protest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Done that.
Absolutely fine.
Okay,
I wish that's all, that it makes something taxable, but.
all right, well, at this point. We're still working through this. We brought up the polls because they're pretty easy. You can see them. And but new inventory and in a world that is changing on a daily basis, it's going to take some work and we're probably late in getting to it.
Yeah, it is multi-layered, it is changing, it's complicated, and I have apologized to providers. We are asking for a lot of detail. We have to. It's a lot of work. Hopefully in future years, they can just resubmit the same form with a few updates. But it's a lot of information. There's a lot of different ways we communicate now that the staff is having us catch up with. We're doing the best we can to try to cast our net and implement it to the best we can. But yeah,
Okay. Any further questions? Thank you.
And I'll just add that I'm not able to stay through this afternoon, but I was planning to just be available tomorrow afternoon when we are all doing your markup, and if there's.
Markup.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's
that would be
questions,
fine.
follow-up questions, I'm happy to field with those.
Yeah, we've actually changing subjects shortly. And again, housekeeping bill up. Okay, so next we have Wendy Mays. Come on up, Wendy. I hope you're feeling better after this discussion.
I did print a few copies of the document that I am going to be talking about. I thought I printed 7 of them and then I got here and there were only 4, so my printer did not do me great today, but I did send it to Charlotte, so it is also.
Oh, okay, then it's posted on the website.
I did.
Oh, it is,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Website.
So. Go ahead, they ask you to introduce yourself to the record.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Wendy Mays, and I'm the Executive Director of the Vermont Association of Broadcasters. We're the nonprofit trade association that unites, supports, celebrates, and advocates for all of the over-the-air radio and television broadcasters that are operating around the state of Vermont. Thank you so much for allowing me to come in and propose a simple amendment to Section 6 of H 933 that we think will help clear up some confusion about Act 145. I'm asking your committee to please add the definition for communication service provider. Right now, Act 145 does not define what a communication service provider is, which has led the Vermont Department of Taxes to wrongfully include traditional one-way broadcast in their interpretation of who is subject to Act 145. So I know we already heard about this, but I'm going to go ahead and just sort of summarize what happened. In February, Broadcast Radio and Television Station received the form letter that was spoken about from the Department of Taxes, which instructed them to complete the Act 145 communications property inventory form so that taxes can be assessed.
Okay, that sent panic through the industry.
100%, yes.
Okay.
And it also came out of nowhere because they just got this letter and it came out of nowhere with no warning. So the VAB looked at it. We looked at the original bill, we reviewed Act 145 and quickly concluded that the Department of Taxes or their third-party company, I'm not sure which one it was, got a little overzealous with their interpretation of the generic term communications. So I just would like to go over with you, and those are the bullet points on the document that I provided, why we are one-way broadcast and why it does not pertain to us. First of all, broadcast radio, broadcast television, they don't appear and are not implied anywhere in Act 145. Second, communications property is defined as tangible personal property used to enable real-time two-way electromagnetic transmission of information, such as audio, video, and data, that is so fitted and attached to be as part of a local, state, national, or international communications network. Broadcast radio and television is one-way communications. I think we've already established that, so I won't, beat that too badly, but it is true, it is not two-way. Broadcast is also not part of any sort of communications network, local, state, national, or otherwise. Because broadcast does not fit the definition of communications property, and nor should it. We are a completely separate industry from telecom. The only thing that we have in common is that we both use the word communications in our nomenclature, and that's about it. Broadcast infrastructure, in addition to being one way, is expressly used to broadcast news, weather, sports, and entertainment. That's our content that we produce, which is listened to and watched by Vermonters for free. Broadcast does not have subscribers or customers paying for a service, nor do we provide any communication service. To further illustrate my point, it's important for you to know about a ruling that happened in 2020. Vermont Public Radio needed to do some work on their tower. And they applied to use Act 248A, an act I know you're familiar with because you heard testimony about it.
Oh, we're still working.
The State of Vermont Public Utility Commission denied Vermont Public Radio use of Act 248 because they classified broadcast as one-way communication and said that Act 248A was only for two-way communication. And I do have a copy of that denial if anybody is so inclined wants to read it. The VAB went to a lot of expense to hire a tax attorney to communicate all of these facts to the Vermont Department of Taxes so that we could get the mistake fixed. And in an email dated on March 23rd, Will Baker from the Department of Taxes General Counsel conceded in an email to the VAB's attorney that, quote, if a tower has only radio or television one-way communications, it is not communications property. Although that should have been enough to fix the mistake, the Department of Taxes has not offered any formal ruling or official relief notification to the broadcast groups who received the letter in error. That is why we have come to you today and are asking your committee to add a definition for a communication service provider to Section 6 of H 933 that will resolve this issue once and for all.
Okay, and I think with the tax department, so they agree, you're not covered. What they don't know, and they're trying to find out is, do you have an attachment to one of your broadcast towers? You know, the things are so complex, and it sounds like they might have been able to be a little clearer in their definition as to what they were looking for. And
it's actually not as complex as you think it is because the industries are very separate. And so are there wireless towers that broadcasters rent space on for their antennas? Yes. Are there, but those towers would be included in the wireless or the telecoms communication property. Do some broadcasters own their towers and rent out a 3x3 space for a wireless provider's antenna or satellite? In some cases, they might. However, that antenna would be covered under the telecoms communications property. And let me just make a point that I think will make this really clear. There are some farmers that rent their space on their silos for wireless.
There are churches.
Yes. Farmers, churches, where does it stop? Where does it end? Where it stops and ends is that the telecom company is going to be the one that is including those pieces of equipment on their communications property.
Okay, I think that's what we need to make sure of, is that it's clear that if their box, whatever, is on a broadcast tower, that I can understand the tax department is in a brave new world. They're trying to get a whole picture. I can also understand that, you know, we did not intend when we did this bill to rope in. So, but I can see where we do need to know if there are things on your towers, if they're in the silo, they're owned by the telecom company, just to make sure that it gets reported. And make sure that the appropriate party knows they need to report it. It sounds like the appropriate party may not be you.
I'm not sure I understood that part of that.
Well, I sounds with that right now, it sounds like if you do what the tax department adds, you've got to say, we've got Tower A, and oh, by the way, you know, Comcast or Verizon has a box on it. Maybe there's, you know, and your local fire department has a box on it, and the tax department, I think, needs to know those boxes. And it's just making clear who is responsible to report then. Right now, if the fire department reports it, and I don't even think they do it, we used to have a local, the first tower in the area, and everybody hooked on it was a paging service. Hooked on their tower, but make sure that it gets reported and reported appropriately.
So would that not be the telecom who owns
I
it?
think that would be the telecom that owns it. We just need to make sure that it is clear that they are responsible for doing it. Doesn't seem to be any argument that we ever meant to rope in broadcast. This was a purely well, no, it was a very complex.
I don't envy you of having to work.
It was a long bill, and and we make mistakes.
This might be best answered by somebody in the gallery, but I'm curious what the net implications are of conforming or complying with the filling out of this form. Can you just elaborate on to your members, what does it mean to have to inventory this stuff that you are pretty sure does not actually need to be inventoried?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that question, because I was going to get to that.
Okay.
A lot of these broadcast radio stations that I represent, that I'm talking about, they have a staff of maybe 5 people, and they can't afford to even have an engineer on staff anymore. An engineer would be the only person that would be able to do that type of laborious inventory. So they would have to go out and hire someone at
At more than they're probably getting paid per hour.
exactly, like getting paid a lot to have to do this. And so, yes, part of the panic that came from my industry was the fact that the inventory themselves are so laborious that it was making eyes pop. We are not talking about businesses that have the type of human resources or labor that can do this type of inventory. And that's one of the reasons why we have tried to drive the point home so clearly that we are not a communication service provider. We don't fit the definition of Act 145 and really just want to be relieved of it altogether. There are, and this is further down in, I don't want to repeat myself, but I just want to make sure sometimes this happens where people are like, oh, they both use towers, so they're almost exactly the same. The telecom and broadcast are so different from each other, and they're really not even related at all. And so I really feel like this net got passed so large, and it scooped up all of these little broadcast fish who are just trying to survive right now. And it is like that. It is a daily struggle.
I'm surprised we didn't hear from Orca and our other local.
You in my district, WCAX.
No, those are commercial. This is the local news, what do they call, local? Yeah, yeah, I mean, yeah.
So it just,
Broadcast industry is in many areas struggling, and yeah, because it's moved to the internet and it's moved.
our advertising revenue has been demolished. It is, we fight for every drop that we can get on a daily basis. And that dire situation is not an over exaggeration. The burden that would be put on broadcasters if they had to do this, that's where the panic came from my industry.
I understand.
So that's why I've come to you asking if there's any way that a simple definition could be amended to it that doesn't exist already in it.
I think everyone agrees that you're not in the definition. I think it may reach Kirby, they must be doing something on the house. It might just be as simple as telling the tax department, this isn't what we intended. Nobody disagrees that the legislative intent included, it didn't include broadcast. That was never mentioned.
The VAB invested $5,000 of money that we didn't have to pay a tax attorney to talk to them because tax attorney needed to talk to tax attorney in that language. And we still didn't, they conceded and yet didn't offer up.
But they
any
want
sort
you
of-
to still fill out the inventory, so we may.
Right, and our entire argument is we are not subject to Act 145, therefore we do not need to fill out these.
What they're saying is, yeah, maybe they don't know that we might be doing some two-way communication somewhere. I think we can decide whether or not that somewhere is gonna be worth it to put everyone through the kind of pain and expense that you're going through.
Can we add the language? I mean, what's stopping us from not adding clarified?
We just lost our track.
Well, maybe
But
not
we
right
can
this
keep it,
second, but
yeah,
it's-
this will be where it gets, this will be where it gets added. And I wanna let them know, that we're gonna do that. Okay, thank you, and I apologize for the panic and the heartburn.
Section 6, okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you very much for hearing me out. I really appreciate your time.
no, we did not know this was happening until probably a week ago when our emails blew up. And I think, Scott, I've got you on the end of the day. But before we go to banking and insurance, it might. Can you do it in like 5 minutes?
I hope so. I thought
We're 2 minutes over time, so watch 5 minutes.
Thank you, Senator Scott Mackey, Leon Public Affairs. I'm here on behalf of the tax department for T-Mobile and Verizon. So our issue is a little different, and I'm not going to talk about the appeal issue because it sounds like we've got agreement that it was not the tax department's intent to foreclose our ability to appeal, and they're agreeing to the change. So really what I want to talk about is the tax department's interpretation of what's in the communications property tax inventory. We're not arguing that we're not subject to it. We lost that battle in 2024 and we're subject to the bill. The question is, what is subject to the inventory? And the legislative history on this, and it was actually House 657. It's burned into my mind, apparently more than it is yours, Senator Cummings. But so the House sent over a bill that really taxed everyone. I mean, they said the definition that came over, and this is the definition of communications property, said wires, poles, cables, conduit pipes, antennas, poles, towers, machinery, hubs, splitters, switching equipment, routers, servers, power equipment, and any other network equipment. So the bill that came over from the House was extremely broad. It was everything. This committee looked at that bill and said that's too much. And initially the committee said we need another year to study this. So the finance committee report on the bill that came out on a 7-0 vote took the whole thing out and said we're going to study it for a year. But subsequent to that, and it was at the end of the session, Senator Chipman had conversations with the House, and they agreed that there would be a compromise that narrowed the definition of communications property. And basically what the Chittenden Amendment did on the floor was put a period after wireless towers. So basically machinery, distribution hubs, all that stuff, including the catch-all, any other network equipment was taken out of the bill.
Just a really quick stop. It was advice from Jill Remick. So Jill, the tax department actually recommended that the Chittenden Amendment.
Jill had said they didn't have the skills to do a lot of this. There was a lot of.
Didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Okay, so imagine our surprise when we get the request for the inventory. And by the way, the statute does not say the tax department shall inventory every piece of property someone has. The statute says, and I've got it right here, it says a sworn inventory of its taxable communications property. So when we got this request for the inventory, we're like, what? All this stuff that was taken out of the bill by the Senate and ultimately passed and signed by the governor, they're asking for an inventory. They must be trying to tax it. So we had a meeting with the companies and the tax department, Jill, and the consultant.
And we basically laid out our case, and they said, no, we don't interpret the bill that way. We think that that list is just basically descriptive. And it's not, basically, they're ignoring the Senate taking out all that other stuff and saying, we believe all that is taxable. And I have a letter, from the tax department. They did reply to us in writing, saying that the tax department's position is the flow of communications property in VSA 3602B is not limited to wires, cables, conduit, antennas, poles, and wireless towers. So their position is that nothing in the sentence indicates that the definition is limited to the example items. So our issue is beyond, we totally agree with the broadcasters. It's one way. That's a slam dunk. But our concern is that the tax department is interpreting what's in the base to be much, much broader than what the Senate language that was adopted and ultimately signed into law. And the reason why this is a problem for us is that, and it was alluded to earlier. So we are subject to the municipal property tax as business personal property in those communities that have elected to tax it. And we have to report that property to the local jurisdictions that tax business personal property unless it's in the state statute. And so now we have the situation where it's like, well, we think that the tax department's list of taxable property is way too broad, and we should only have to report taxable property. And by the way, we still need to report the rest of the property that's subject to the business personal property taxes directly to those 40-something municipalities that elected to tax business personal property. So the tax department says, we'll just report everything and we'll sort it out later. Well, that's great, but if we report something to the state, even though we believe it's not subject to the tax, we feel like we should be reporting it to the municipalities, because it's not, if it's not in the state tax, it's still subject. So it's one thing to just say, you know, let's just have everybody report everything and sort it out afterwards, but it's not that simple. Because if we do that, and then the municipalities come back to us and say, well, you should have reported the stuff that wasn't listed in the statute. So we're sort of in this really difficult position where we feel like the department has significantly exceeded the legislative intent for what you guys agreed to put in the law. And we're concerned about the interaction between municipal reporting and what we report to the state. And, you know, by the way, we only have 2 weeks to implement this once we figured it out. The tax department did get an additional year, but we didn't find out until the end of February that there was this additional property that we thought was not subject to the state evaluation. So that's kind of the situation we're in. So what we're looking for the committee to do is to go back into the law and clarify that actually the only communications property that's subject to state valuation and assessment by PBR is the stuff that you specifically listed in the statute, not the stuff that you removed by amendment. Because at the end of the day, if it's just a list, it just seemed like there was a compromise, and then the department is just ignoring that and saying, well, that list was just advisory. So by striking all that stuff, it was really meaningless. And we continue to think that everything the wireless companies own that sort of isn't listed is subject to taxation and must be reported. So
Okay.
I hope I was fast enough. I'm sorry if I sped
That's
through it.
enough. We have your testimony.
Yeah. The one of the things I'd add, if I did report that bill, and I had spent a lot of time on it, the things that were dropped after the period were because, what I recall from Jill Remick, and I think she should echo this, they're very ephemeral, short life lived. I mean, they have a lifespan of 2 to 5 years. All the other things that we do include have 20, 30, 40-year lifespans. And so to price out a server that you bought 2 years ago and appraise that on an ongoing cycle, that's why we're like, no, that shouldn't be. So that's why we dropped those things. That's what I remember.
I think they came in at one point and said they didn't know how to appraise it, and they wanted it. So, okay, we will see if we can find some clarifying language when I will need to talk. And see where this goes. If that, I'm not seeing the committee disagreeing if you need to clarify this. It sounds like all kinds of people are going through all kinds of work that is probably not going to yield anything worth the effort. So let's see what we can do.
Thank you. I mean, you know, to the broadcaster's point, I mean, it would be as if you were to say to homeowners, well, just report your automobiles, your computers, even though it's exempt, we just want you to report it so we'll know where it is. I mean, you could imagine the hue and cry. It just doesn't seem like the effort of putting taxpayers that clearly aren't.
Right.
I mean, theirs is a different, we just need some clarification on what we're supposed to do, because we either have to report it to the state or to the communities that tax business personal property.
Okay.
Thank you for your.
We're gonna have to move on. We're going to 8648, which is this banking, insurance and securities housekeeping. And Joe Valenti's sitting here. Very quiet. This is a housekeeping bill. Joe, do you have? I know there were a couple of questions that came up. Do you have?
Yes. So we have a short agenda. Joe Valenti, Director of Policy at VFR. For the record, I do also have a handout that I had pass around that I also had sent in earlier today. So the three things that we wanted to offer quickly today are quick review of the different banking definitions. Since there were questions about that last time, this handout does walk through all of them, and I have someone from our legal division on Zoom who can answer questions if we have any on the definitions. So first is banking definitions. Second is securities. Our securities division was not able to join last time, and our deputy commissioner and our director of enforcement are on Zoom if there are any questions about the restitution and education fund, referrals for criminal prosecution, etc. I also do have a little bit more information to share on crypto kiosks, since that was a topic that was raised last time. Deputy Commissioner Ferentz is traveling today. I know he may try to hop on Zoom, but I'm here in the event he's not. And then we have the banks and the credit unions here to talk about a few of the other provisions in the bill that you want questions on. Okay. So first off, in terms of the definitions, again, the goal here was to add some specificity. There were a number of places where we refer to financial institution where that meaning may be non-specific. And in colloquial terms, in this for as far as the state of Vermont is concerned, a financial institution is a bank. There are categories within that, and some of those are on the back side of the sheet, middle on the right, that Vermont financial institutions are primarily banks chartered in Vermont. State financial institutions are those chartered in other states. National financial institutions are banks chartered federally. And this is important because if you look in other places and other times, sometimes financial institution includes credit unions, sometimes it doesn't. Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, I believe it includes a wide variety of actors. So we are referring to banks, and we are referring to the specific type of institution for each section. So in some of these sections, we use the term regulated entity instead of financial institution. In some, we're using lending institution because it really is pertaining to that not only Vermont banks and credit unions, but Vermont licensed lenders. We refer to insured depository institutions instead of federally insured, and reference the specific federal laws. And then on the back again, we have Vermont financial institution is clearer than financial institution with their principal place of business in the state. We turn depository institution into financial institution, and then lastly, financial institution into person, because for those sections, as I recall, those are the reverse mortgage sections. You do not need to be a financial institution to be in that one. So this is all in the name of greater specificity. I will leave it to Diane. Is there anything that I missed or forgot in there?
No, I think that was great, Joe. This is Diane Sherman with the Department of Financial Regulation.
So the only other piece on this, and then happy for Diana maybe to take any questions. There was a debate last time around section 22, which dealt with the Community Reinvestment Act and whether it should be Vermont Financial Institution, a Vermont person, another term. That was the one thing.
Vermont, the
Yeah.
person.
Yeah. Our recommendation there, we do not believe that we need additional clarity in that section. The banks that are subject to the Community Reinvestment Act know that they're subject to it as a federal law. So we would recommend we let council know that we'd be fine just taking section 22 out of the bill for simplicity.
Okay, wait.
And that is not in the table, since that is something that we're proposing to take.
This was changing it person.
Right.
Yes, this was the one that I was like, this is not consistent.
Right. Right. We changed it to, right, that there was, we didn't have an appropriate change, and I think we did not. After we reviewed it further, we didn't feel like the change was necessary.
So you would propose if we pick this out, it would just stay as financial institution in
Yes.
this case.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions, anything else? One.
So that was the first item. Second item was securities restitution and enforcement. And I know there was a very brief remarks. I think Deputy Commissioner Smith was hoping to make on that topic, and primarily it's just an opportunity for any questions since last time.
What section is that?
The restitution fund, I believe, was section 54.
54.
So Joe, if I heard you correctly, you want to talk now about the restitution fund, or are we talking more about criminal referrals? I'm sorry if I missed.
Sure. No, why don't you can just start very quickly with the restitution fund and then criminal referrals and any questions that the committee might have.
Okay, in the right now, do you guys have any specific questions regarding the restitution fund? I missed testimony last week, but the group did a great job of what we're trying to accomplish with our changes in section 54. If not, I can have Sarah Heim, our Director of Exams and Enforcement, talk to you about criminal enforcement. Go ahead.
We've just gone through a ton of different bills, so trying to remember what our concerns were on this specific section. If you could just tell us what's section 54 on page 75, bottom of page 75.
Yep. So let's see here.
Remind us of what we might have
Looking for my notes.
concerned about.
So in 5616, what we were doing, we had a few changes, adding the definition of a claimant, moving some information around under the eligibility section, adding a dependent, adding the definition of a dependent child based on the federal tax code, amending the text to say vulnerable adult versus vulnerable person to match Title 33 for consistency, cleaning up a reference in A. It says 690214, but it needs to be 34 because that's the incorrect reference. And then in my page numbering, what I have printed out might be different than y'all's. In under C eligibility number 2A, clarifying that the victim needs to be a resident of Vermont at the time of that securities violation. And then further down, just adding clarity regarding the process and the violation for restitution. And then in number 5, again, my page number might be different in yours. just clarifying that the following information needs to be provided, you know, in an application to us, but clarifying that the information we receive is confidential. And that's in item number 5. And then in J, including that the commissioner can adopt rules to implement this section. And that's all I have in my notes for that.
My recollection was that we had questions about how this worked, and I remember the commissioner sent us a website to show what happens when there's a restitution case.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yep. So I'll have Sarah Heim, our Director of Exams and Enforcement. She can share that information with you.
Yeah, the commissioner did send us a website, but I think we were just, this is my recollection of what we were trying to get.
Yeah, I don't think there was
how it
any
worked.
real concern about it. It was just, how does it work? It was information. I don't have notes about concerns. Okay,
And then I think the other topic from last time, if there are any remaining questions, was about referrals for criminal prosecution. If anyone
Bless you.
wants to ask our security division folks about that.
And which section of the bill is that?
We are not addressing that in the bill today. I think it was just a general.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Whether that happened.
Yeah.
And how that happened.
Yep. And again, if y'all want information on that, Sarah on the call can give you some great information about that.
Brief information.
Okay.
Sure. Hi, this is Sarah Heim. I'm Director of Examinations and Enforcement for the Securities Division at Vermont DFR. I think we touched on this a little bit, or Joe touched on this a little bit last time in front of you all, but just to give a brief overview. The short answer is yes, we do sometimes refer cases to criminal authorities. It really depends on the facts and circumstances. A lot of the cases we deal with are really focused on securities violations, so violations of the Vermont Uniform Securities Act. But if there is a potential criminal violation as well, we can refer cases to federal authorities as well as to state and local authorities. We also sometimes receive complaints from individuals who have been the victims of fraud and come to us, and unfortunately, we don't have jurisdiction over those claims because there's no securities hook. And we do refer those folks out to local police. We urge them to file a police report and also to file a report with the FBI through IC3. In addition to referring cases to criminal authorities, we can also refer cases to the Securities and Exchange Commission or other state regulatory authorities.
okay.
Thank you.
Any questions, committee? I think a lot of these were just our technical understanding.
Yeah, be sure we understood, Bill, that we were.
And so the last item that I have then, before turning it over to the other witnesses, is the issue of the cryptocurrency kiosks. I did want to provide a little bit more information. So as a reminder, we have 2 currently active cryptocurrency kiosks in the state, one in Brattleboro and one in Essex Junction. And under current law, the moratorium on new kiosks expires June 30th. So we looked into the matter. We recommend that the committee either, and again, the existing language does not address the continuation of the kiosks in any way. We recommend either extending the moratorium to prevent new kiosks from entering the market, or considering a ban on these kiosks if you choose to go in that direction. By our most recent estimate, it's a small fraction of 1%, so far less than 1% of all Vermont crypto transactions under our money transmission licensees took place at a kiosk in the past year. We're not aware of any complaints that have been filed since last year's projections went into effect. Now, there have been allegations made by 2 state attorneys general in other states, one in Iowa, one in DC, that they've both claimed that as part of their investigations, over 90% of transactions at kiosks were fraudulent. We don't have any sense of whether that holds true here.
Wow.
And it is a very, like I said, it is a very tiny share of transactions in the crypto market. But as you look at the picture nationally, there have been many associations between kiosks and fraud, and that's why we had asked for the protections to be put in place last year, such as the daily transaction limits and refund protections and warnings and other things.
What's in the bill? If anything?
Currently, the only thing the bill does is moves definitions as a housekeeping matter. You would need to add any specific language that you would want.
Okay, so we need to add
The moratorium
an
or
extension. Or extension. Or a ban.
We did this,
Last.
put in those protections last year, that was,
Really, that year?
it was last year.
No, but we only did it for a year.
Yeah.
Well, the
we did it for
protections
when the-
remain, but the moratorium on new kiosks was extended was going to expire and was extended for one more year.
So we could extend the moratorium. We've got two, and so far. It's minimal transactions, and as far as we know. They haven't had fraud, and they've been very active. In keeping that, so we can say. You can get two more. And anyone, I mean, at this point. Given the time frame we're looking at, an extension of another year might be the easiest thing if we haven't had a problem. To ban it, we'd have to take a lot more testimony.
Well, just in terms of the statistics of what we're talking about, they're saying elsewhere, the two states that have looked at this, that they have, how many transactions that have they had? You had any on these?
I don't,
Is there information to help us frame what does
the
that
overall
mean?
volume. I do have I did look nationally at complaints about crypto kiosks that, like I said, we have not received any to my knowledge. But the FBI's IC3 was referenced a few minutes ago. This is the Internet Crime Complaint Center. So they take all different kinds of complaints around fraud. They have received last year over 13,000 complaints about crypto ATMs or kiosks. Now, to put that in context, that is, it's a small share of the overall complaints. They've received a little over 1 million complaints last year. So it's 13 on all kinds of fraud and scam topics. But the amount of losses were $389 million nationally. And the number of complaints had increased 23%. The amount of losses had increased 58%. So it is a growing concern.
It's a question of what percentage of the total amount of transactions are fraudulent, and what's the dollar amount per transaction? If you look at that dollar amount, for example, that's been lost compared to how many transactions. So that gives you an idea of what the extent of the fraud is, one, and also what's the magnitude of it using this particular medium compared to other media.
So we don't have, the FBI data are broken out by state level for some things and not others. They do have a state by state number for all crypto, whether it's from a kiosk or from another source. And their number there was that there were about 13% of the IC3 complaints from Vermonters dealt with crypto in some form, whether it was at a kiosk or not at a kiosk. There were $7.5 million in reported losses related to crypto in Vermont reported to the FBI. Again, we don't know how many of those were from the kiosks themselves, but if you do the math there, that's an average of $35,000 per loss.
So I definitely support extending the moratorium, and I'd also support banning these things. Well, you have to remember the testimony we got from the AARP is so much of the cons that happen at small dollar amounts, $1,000, $2,000 aren't reported. People are ashamed, and when the 60+ are targeted with these things, they don't want to lose their financial independence, so they don't come forward. This is, and the problems are escalating if you do a new search. So I definitely don't want any more of these, and I'd be happy to shut them all down.
And one other bit that is new, I think two things are new since we met last week. One was the IC3 report. This came out on April 6th, but again, share it with folks. I think the other is that, when we were last week, Indiana had passed a ban on kiosks in March. Just 2 days ago, the governor of Tennessee signed into law a bill banning kiosks. There's a law in Minnesota, there's a bill in Minnesota and it's passed one house, it's under review in the other. Just to say that we would, if you chose to go in that direction, we would not be the first to do so. There are 20 some states that have some form of a protection, generally along the lines of what Vermont
Seems
does.
pretty bipartisan too, given those states.
I'm gonna move this along because if we are gonna discuss a ban, we're going to have to take more testimony. This bill doesn't have to be out of here by Friday. So if we're gonna keep going, I'm gonna finish up the testimony today. We will have to notify the industry if they aren't watching and don't know already, that this is under consideration, and we'll have, I believe he's the gentleman with the glasses that can translate into any language or from any language into English and other things.
Missed that one.
He's got these new these new glasses that, as you're walking down the street and they're speaking Swahili, it can translate it into English.
How does this relate to crypto?
No, it's the whole tech industry
The
and
guy that testified.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
yes, we'll be back.
No.
Okay.
All right.
I bought a pair of those Meta glasses, but they don't do facial recognition, so I.
So anyway, we will have to let him go. I've got 3 more people to get to, folks, and we've got 3 more items on the agenda, so I'm gonna move us along. I'm gonna go to Chris Delia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we will put this on for some time next week or the week after. We'll start getting warnings soon. Okay.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. For the record, Chris Delia, President, Vermont Bankers Association. I'm going to offer just a couple of comments real quick. With your permission, turn it over to Jeff Hesslink, and then I'll be in the chair still for any questions or comments. So the particular sections that you were looking at related to banking were 36 and 37. The first one, 36, dealt with the number of board meetings and what happens during the interim. Nobody had any questions related to that. 37 deals with the loan authority. And Jeff is going to speak to that, and I'll offer any supplemental comments. The one thing I just want to share with you initially is we would not bring anything to you that was controversial in the DFR bill, because it's not a controversial bill and it hasn't been for years. So this is something that we worked with DFR during the fall. Jeff and his folks brought it to DFR. I got involved, and the goal was to make sure that we were all in agreement with the process to go forward, and that this would be the vehicle. So from the industry's perspective, and I mean, DFR mentioned the other day, we'll probably mention today that we're all on board with this, and there's good reasons for us to be on board. And I wanted Jeff to be able to share with you the actual implications in the field that they've been experiencing. So with your permission,
Yes, okay, so Jeff, we just ask you to introduce yourself for the record and tell us who you represent, and the floor is yours.
Sure. Well, thank you very much. I'm delighted to have this chance. This is my first opportunity to speak in front of any sort of legislative committee or board. So thank you. My name is Jeff Hesslink. I'm chairman and CEO of the Business Bank. The Business Bank was a bank formed just over 3 years ago in the state of Vermont. I think if Aaron were here, he'd tell you it was the first bank chartered in the state of Vermont in 33 years or so. So I spent all my life in Vermont banking. A former employer was Merchants Bank. That's me and my background. Chris, do you want me to just dive into the topics that the committee focused on last time?
Yeah.
Sure. I think one of them, there was a lot of good questions around proposed change in statute that related to the current statute that says any loan over 10% of the bank's capital must be approved by a board of directors. And what we are proposing is to change that statute and say the board of directors will set the credit policy for the bank based on all of the factors that a board would consider in creating a credit authority policy. We think it belongs with the board rather than sort of one size fits all state statute. And why that's very, very important for my company. This is the most important part of, I will tell you, for our company, this is the most important part of the proposed statute changes is this statute that requires a loan over 10% of the capital be approved by the board. And let me tell you why. I started this bank because there was a need in the community. Probably some of you may be aware, but there's been sort of mass consolidation happened in the banking industry in the last 30 years, right? Banks are it's a scalable, low margin business. It's ripe for consolidation. So what happens in consolidation is decisions get centralized. There's a loss of discretion, and there's significantly reduced service levels for small and medium-sized businesses. Those small and medium-sized business owners have loan decisions that are made by people they don't know out of state, and those decisions take a very long time to happen. That's frankly why I raised $35 million from Vermonters and started a bank, was to fill that niche. We take care of small and medium-sized businesses, and we do it with speed in decision-making and certainty in execution. We do what we say we're going to do. And I can't overemphasize that is our competitive advantage, is that we can take care of our customers with responsive speed. This statute that requires the board of directors to approve loans over 10% of the capital just runs against that. It takes away my competitive advantage. It makes me right, because I can't ask the board to be available every day. I've got customers that need me nonstop. So it takes away competitive advantage, and it is, it's untenable. I can't overemphasize the importance of this change to me. And again, the board, the proposals have the credit approval lending authority approved by the board. So the main reason for me is it takes away our competitive advantage. I will also say, and Chris confirmed this, starting 20 years ago, the industry really moved away from board of directors approving loans for the simple reasons they're not qualified. Right, assessing repayment ability and making loan approval decisions, it takes a lot of experience and skill and training, and bank board directors are just not qualified. They don't have the training or the skill set to do it. So, and I will tell you, any medium-sized bank in the country does not go to the board of directors for loan approvals. Those don't happen. So for me, it's mainly competitive advantage, but I think it's more in tune with sort of prudent business practice. Executives should approve loans. Executives with a skill set and training should be approving the loans. The board should be providing governance and oversight. And that happens very well. There's no proposed changes to that. Banks, under statute, we're required to provide detailed analysis of the loan portfolio to board of directors quarterly. These are all big loans, industry specific, industry exposures, any problem loans all get reported out. And that's, again, no proposed changes to the governance and oversight. That works perfectly. It's just the proposals to get the board out of the approval aspect of that.
Just for clarity, and I've got a question. I'm looking at page 51.
Correct.
And this strikes credit of 10% shall be approved by the majority.
That's correct.
So your testimony is in support
Correct.
of
Of
this.
striking, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. And
Exactly. Yeah, it's the most important. Yeah.
all right, Senator Heidi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Jeff, thank you for your testimony. My concern was not actually about that piece. It was about, if you look, I don't know if you have the bill in front of you, but it's lines 15 and 16, or 14 through 16, really. It's the extensions of credit at one time to a borrower in excess of 20% of the bank's capital, or to a corporate group in excess of 50% of the bank's capital. And my concern was that that was a lot of risk for a small bank to take on 50% of your capital. And I mean, it's your business, not mine, but I worry about bank failures. So just wondered if you could reassure me on that one.
Yeah, and that's the second thing.
And that's the second part.
I'm sorry.
We agree completely. Why don't I just cover that one too, because they're kind of related, and then I'm happy to answer any questions. So, current banking statute says that a bank can't make a loan to a customer or related groups of customers in excess of 20% of the bank's capital. That is a great law. I'm not recommending any changes. That should stay. It's proposed to stay. And frankly, you all should know, yes, we are very judicious with our capital, and it would be uncommon for a bank to go up to that limit. But so there's no proposed change to that law. What is proposed is this idea of 20% of capital to quote unquote a related borrower, right? What does that mean? Frankly, the current statute's ambiguous on that point. So what we're proposing is let's get super clear on what related borrowers are. And we just said best practice. Let's adopt the OCC language, which by the way was scrutinized and changed after Dodd-Frank. And related borrowers at the highest level committee are defined as borrowers that there's one source of repayment, right? If two companies rely on the same source of repayment, we have to consolidate those for what we call legal lending purposes, right? This 20% of capital rule. So one source of repayment, financial interdependence. It's pretty broad, but so we capture a lot there. Control, one borrower controls another, and then 25% common ownership. Those are the main criteria to say, okay, if there are two, let's say company A and company B meet any one of those criteria, this 20% holds. We cannot put more than 20% of our capital at risk. It would be imprudent to do that. So that's what all that language is. It's just trying to take away the ambiguity and line it up, frankly, with current tried and true definitions of related borrower. The 50%, that was a great catch. I listened to the testimony, the recording of the testimony. That was a great catch, because 50%, you should go, ugh, what is that, right? That's too much capital to anyone's set of borrowers. That's, you should know that language is added by DFR, Denise DeShanes, and it's to address the new world where there are very complicated ownership structures and really sort of private equity or bigger investment groups, right? So take an example of company A and company B, and they don't meet any of those four criteria we talked about: financial interdependence, one source of repayment, control, or 25% common ownership. But say, for instance, they're in a part of a larger conglomerate or private equity enterprise where the common control is at the top, does own both of those entities that, again, didn't trigger the 20%. This 50% is on top of that says, you know, irrespective of whether they're consolidated by those 20%, if it's owned by this control group that's above them in any other way, there's a further cap. You can't have more than 50% of your capital in that. And today, by the way, a statute doesn't address that. It's unlimited. So when Denise brought this up, reflection of really there's a change in the world, right? There's more privately owned entities and not controlled by one group, but by, you know, where nobody has 25% ownership, right? It's just reflective of that. So that's where the 50% is. It's on top of the 20%, if you will. That there's no proposal that change to 20%.
Okay,
capital.
so can I, if I might, just to make sure I'm understanding this first. So if you have, I'm just going to use the round numbers. So you loan 20%, or you extend credit to 20% of your credit to one entity. And then you have another entity that you might extend another 20% to. And then you have a third entity that you would extend 10% to. And then if you climb up the ladder, they're all owned at the very top by the same corporate structure, but down below, they're not. So that's when you would hit the 50%. So beyond that, you can blend.
That's what the 50% intended to do.
Okay, and I think I heard you say that this adding these 50% is actually more conservative than current law. Current law, there's no cap.
There's no cap.
Yeah, you do agree. You agree with that, Chris? Look, I'm not an attorney or I hate to be giving you, but that's my read of it.
So currently in statute, there's no cap. And when we looked at this, looking at what the federal banking regulations say, Office of the Comptroller of the Currency is the language that we pulled from. They were one of the most conservative ones out there. They have a 50% rule that was just looked at in January of 2012 to implement a Dodd-Frank provision. So we said that's the standard for the national banks, parity for the state chartered banks, again, conservative with a cap. Seemed to make sense. 50% will carry forward in Vermont statute. Right now, there'd be nothing.
There's no cap. Okay. And Jeff, as a banker, would you, I mean, is it common to get this high in percentages of?
No, it would be rare for a bank. I can tell you, Merchants Bank, we had 2,000 loan customers, where one or two of them near the 20%, maybe. Maybe it would be very rare. It is, your senses are accurate, right? This is a risk business, and having a disproportionate amount of anyone's capital to any one business, no matter how strong, would runs against the principles of diversification and whatnot. So the 20% is a good rule. It's really this 50% cap, I think, is good because there's none exist today. And do I think a bank would want to make so loans, because there's these private equity investment groups and that are owned by, maybe there's 1% owners, and maybe they own a widget manufacturer that sells to aerospace, and then maybe they own a distribution company that moves transports I don't know, something across the country. We would want to maybe do both of those loans, but to a limit, right? No more than 50% of capital. Again, completely unrelated borrowers, different repayment sources, no control, no interdependence. But if they are owned by one entity, there's probably should be a limit on that as well. And as Chris said eloquently, I think, look, the OCC is really, really good at this. They're the most conservative of the regulators. And if they think that's a good limit, boy, that landed well with me too.
Okay, great.
I'll
Thank
just
you.
finally say all of that is subject to scrutiny during the examination process where DFR comes in.
Okay.
That's right. That's right. And you also see in the statute, right, that DF, as it relates to this, the commissioner has and should retain the right to say, hey, I can also, outside of the well-defined definitions, the commissioner has the right to aggregate credit, right? And that's what part of the exam process that works really well, because you have to be able to apply judgment to these things, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think that authority is where it belongs, and that's where the commissioner.
Okay.
Thanks for this testimony. It really resolved any concerns I had from the last time. And thanks for opening up a bank in Vermont. It's been too long.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun. Yeah, we've and look, the company's grown dramatically, far greater than my expectations, frankly, and that's evidence of a couple of things, right? There's a real need in the marketplace for small and medium-sized businesses, and we're happy to fill it. And we're doing a nice job. You should know this company didn't exist, and today we have a $300 million balance sheet, so we have $250 million in deposits and $200 million in commercial loans. Less than 10% out of the state that we're growing to other states because it's worked well, but almost all in Vermont. So, we're doing a good job, and it feels nice.
Recently used to be the Bank of Burlington. just in case you're not familiar with the main change.
And what is
Yeah,
it now?
that's right.
Business
It's called the
bank.
business bank because it works. This model is so much in demand. We've opened an office and it's going to be a very nice company. We've opened in Springfield, Massachusetts, sort of early last year, and then the end of last year we opened in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. So my beloved Bank of Burlington name didn't travel so well to those others. So we changed the name to the business bank now, but it's we're gonna fill a niche as the consolidation occurs in the banking industry. We're gonna take care of small and medium sized businesses.
Just don't sell yourself to a big bank.
Keep your headquarters in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stay small and nimble, local.
I literally built this thing from a back of a napkin. I have no intention. So I worked at Merchants Bank for a large part of my career, and that company, public company, ultimately did get sold. And I trust you. It is my objective to keep this, not sell this company, and to continue to grow it and take care of businesses.
Thank you. Thanks.
All set?
Chris,
I'm good.
you're good? Vision, are we good? No questions? That was the one place I had stars that we had questions.
Yeah.
So that is helpful.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Carrie.
Thank you very much. I sign off now, right?
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Go or stay.
Okay. Yeah. I just want to make sure I was doing it right. Thank you all very much for your time.
Bye.
Good afternoon, committee. I'm Carrie Allen. I'm the president of the Association of Vermont Credit Unions. It's nice to meet all of you.
You're the new Joe.
I'm the new Joe. Often I've been referred. Yes.
Well,
I was in Washington.
Finance.
Yeah, I was in Washington earlier I guess in March now, and Bernie Sanders said, Joe had much better ties than you did. And I was like, oh, great. Thank you. I am the new president after 47 years. We've had a change in leadership, but certainly long history in Vermont credit unions. I was in natural person credit unions as a senior leader. For 15 years, I was on the board of directors at the association for a dozen years, and I've been on staff for about a year and a half now. So excited to be with you, and certainly happy to share the impact to credit unions. We are supportive of the updates in this proposed legislation for Vermont credit unions. The 4 points are reflective of what we see at the federal level for our federal chartered credit unions. And so I think, making sure that we have equity and competitiveness in the chartering system is very important to credit unions. And so we see this as a positive path forward, but certainly happy to answer any questions. I believe that the committee had some questions about the merger update, which was section 42. In the event that there was a proposed merger, the current statute requires state chartered credit unions to receive an affirmative vote from both the surviving credit union membership as well as the merging credit union membership. And the proposal in this legislation is that only the merging credit union members would need to agree to the proposed merger. And again, this is something similar to what we see with federally chartered credit unions. In general, there is little impact besides the potential of growth for the surviving membership. And so we don't often hear of any concerns from the surviving members, but certainly happy to answer any questions that committee may have around that or other issues.
And we haven't done it in a while. Chris is still here. But our regulations regulate state registered banks and credit unions. And so we've been trying to keep the regulations kind of in line so we don't encourage migration to the federal system, which is one reason you'll hear a lot of this. Okay. Any questions?
I think just looking at this section and, the surviving, quote unquote, surviving credit union. Usually the bigger, is it usually the bigger one, like the smaller one is merging into a big one?
Often, although we have seen recently, a merger of similar sized credit unions. So it's not necessarily always based on size, but traditionally that would be the case.
And is there ever a case where the surviving one would be destabilized by a merger and might not want to do it? Or is it usually?
Well, certainly there is a long vetting process in any merger, and DFR and regulators would be very actively involved to try to assess that. In addition to, a financial analysis, there are other considerations in terms of services provided to the members, whether that's an expanded opportunity, oftentimes to the merging credit union membership. So lots of factors go into it, but, if, for example, there was a financially challenged credit union that was being absorbed in a merger, then there could be an impact to the financial statement. But as I said, that's a very well vetted process, and the regulator, DFR, is very engaged in that process.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I had hoped to vote this out, and we are actually ahead of schedule. You might drop Tanya Morehouse a note, see if she's available. I have this one put on for a vote, but then we dropped the little crypto thing. And apparently, if we don't do anything, the moratorium ends, and then can they come in if we do nothing?
July 1st, subject to the new projections.
So we need to do something.
Removing section 22. And then there was something, weren't we gonna do something with the broadcast section?
So this is the banking that you're talking about. The broadcast is the miscellaneous.
It's on miscellaneous.
Oh, right.
This is DFR. I think the only one in here is crypto.
And then there were,
And then
Section
there's
22.
moving 22.
Where persons got confused.
No, we
and there were two items that we had discussed last time. One of them was on, I believe, page 2, just changing registration to license. And there was a change on page 72. All of those are with Lit Council.
They're all so.
Who's the banking?
They're with
Maria.
you.
Yeah.
Kirby.
And Maria.
Yeah, Maria.
Makes a lot of sense.
That's right. We couldn't get Maria. She's out today, but that's right. I've heard she's in about as good shape as Jenny. They both have no voice. There's apparently something going around.
You said Maria in the banking bill, right? We could do it next week.
We can do, yes, that is not, we have to have it out this week. We can't do something to crypto without giving the industry full voice. So I think the Shouldice Association is their lobbyist. Heather was last year. And we'll let her know that we're gonna make a decision to kill them or turn it wide open or extend just the just extend the 2 we've got for X amount of time. So I think we've got a couple technical changes. I think that's all we have with that bill. So while we're waiting for I can give you a break, but I have another bill on to be voted out. It needs to be out this week, and that is the yield bill. It has a couple things in it, so I need to know what you want, and then I'll give you a 10-minute break. It has the workaround for the transportation bill, which adjusts, it puts in more,
That's in the yield bill?
believe that's in the yield bill.
I
Am I
think
right?
that's in-
No,
it's-
that's a miscellaneous tax. Okay, then the one thing in the yield bill, there's too many interrelated bills. One thing in the yield bill that, and I have a feeling it's an up or down vote. The yield bill uses the million plus or minus dollars from last year's surplus to buy down the property tax. It spreads it over 2 years.
100 million.
100 million. It's like 52 this year.
144 million.
Yeah. It spreads it out, which means there's less of a decrease this year. And the numbers are there. I think it's something like the average is 7% as opposed to 3%. If we do it, it's like a 3%, average 3%. So that means some are gonna be higher. So it's 3 or 7. Now, if we do 7, then some will be in the double digits in all probability. That, that is the one thing in there, and I have a feeling that witnesses aren't going to change anything, that's going to be an up or down vote. So I'd like to get that on for vote, so we get one bill out of here. And with that, I will give you a 10-minute break to meditate on that proposal. And maybe stretch your legs. And then we'll come back, we're gonna hear from Tanya on the Burlington TIF, which I'm looking at the makeup of this committee.